It's time for yet another episode of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth, and as always, joining me today is your other host, Paul Hayes. In this episode, we talk about feed selection, minerals, and environmental regulations. Welcome to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast,
bringing you the innovative new ways of the cattle industry.
We're your hosts, Baxter Whitworth and Paul Hayes. Together, we're going to be interviewing leaders within the cattle industry.
Here on this podcast, our focus is honoring God and innovating the cattle industry. Get ready to listen, learn, and laugh as we help innovate the cattle industry.
Let's get innovating. Have you been looking for a place to buy top quality AI sire semen or collectible of your own? Well, look no further than Elgin Breeding Services. Located in Elgin, Texas, Elgin Breeding Service is not only one of the best breeding services in the business, but also has superior customer service. Contact them at ebsbull@elginbreedingservices.com or by phone at 512-285-2019. Again, that's 512-285-2019. And visit their website at elginbreedingservice.com. Well, Paul, how are you this evening? I think
great.
Evening. Is it evening?
6:30.
6:30. I'd call that evening. I think night.
Yeah.
We're getting to night, I'd say. But anyways, we would like to welcome back to the program Dr. Russell Carrell. Let's introduce him real quick. Dr. Russell Carrell grew up in Nacogdoches, Texas, where he was introduced to the agriculture world through his family's cattle and watermelon business. He really got involved in the agriculture scene during his time in FFA at Garrison High School, which set him on the path to his current career. Dr. Carrell graduated from Texas A&M University in 2016 with a degree in animal science. He then completed the ranch management program at Texas Christian University in 2017. He got his master's in agricultural and natural resource science from Tarleton State University, and in 2019, he finished his doctorate in rumen nutrition at Auburn University in 2022. After earning his doctorate, he joined Cargill Animal Nutrition as a beef technical service specialist. He focuses on helping customers optimize herd nutrition, is always with an eye on what he works best for their business. He works with clients from coast to coast, but pays special attention to those in Texas and the Dakotas. Dr. Carrell, how are you this evening into tonight?
I'm doing great, guys. It's an honor to be here again with y'all. I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it as well. In case you don't know, Dr. Carrell was our guest on the last episode, so if you haven't listened to that yet, make sure to do that so that you know exactly what we're talking about and who Dr. Carrell is. All right. So I guess where we left off at, we were kind of wanting to talk about feed selection and what your recommendations would be for different feeds. And what I think this might get a little repetitive, but I think it'd be nice to go through different sectors and different types of feed and just see what your thoughts are in those. So the first type of feed we want to talk about is creep feed. So what do you look for, or what should I look for, or any producers look for in a good creep feed for their calves? Or do you even think that that's important or necessary, or you think it's a waste of money?
So I think creep feed, like anything else that we have in production, it has its fit, and it's a tool that we have on our tool belt that can be valuable, right, in the right context. So some of the things that I think are really important for a good creep feed is when we think about a calf and what a calf's primary source of nutrition is going to be, it's going to be from milk, right? We think about milk. Milk's got a lot of sugar in it. It's high energy. That calf has a high energy requirement. So in order for it to get something out of creep feed, it needs to be a higher energy product. Otherwise, that calf's not going to be able to really eat enough in order to kind of drive some gain. And if it's not high enough energy and we're not driving any additional gain, you might as well just take a bunch of $100 bills and start lighting them on fire, because we're dumping money into a feeder just so we can feel good about it. One of the things that I think is really important about creep feed is that I encourage the use of a limiter technology in a creep feed, because calves are extremely feed inefficient. So what I mean by that is that if we don't have a limiter in the feed, calves will learn to sit at a creep feeder and just eat and eat and eat, and they won't gain any more weight from that added consumption. So with a limiter in there, we can really kind of back that calf off of the feeder after it eats, roughly 1% of its body weight, so 2 to 3 pounds of feed, and they'll get the same additional gain that they would if it ate 7 or 8 pounds.
That's interesting. So how does a limiter work?
So the way a limiter works is it keeps the cattle from over consuming through a few different mechanisms. Part of it is taste. So it tastes a little more bitter in cattle. It doesn't have that sweet, what I like to call kind of moreish flavor, where the cattle don't want to continue to just eat more and more and more of it. So it's typically, we think of things like salt would be a limiter, but salt as a limiter itself isn't really effective. But a limiter is going to control the total amount that a calf or any kind of animal that consuming it eats, as well as change the pattern of consumption. So when we think about a feed that doesn't have a limiter, a calf is going to go to a feeder, and whether it's a creep feeder or a bulk feeder, they're going to go and they're going to eat and eat and eat until they're full, right? So kind of going back to our last episode, we talked about if you ate a bunch of Snicker bars at once, you'd get sick. All right, well, I want you to think about if instead of eating a big pile of little bite-sized Snicker bars all at once, think about if every hour you ate one. And you did that every hour. You just ate one little Snickers bar. You going to get a stomach ache from that?
No.
No, you won't get a stomach ache from that. But if you do that every day, I'll tell you, you'll gain weight by doing that, because every little Snickers bar is an extra 150 calories, right? And every little 150 calories, well, if you eat 10 of those, little Snickers, like, ooh, you've just added a lot of calories to your diet. So the way a limiter works is it allows us to put a high energy feed in front of those cattle, but they only go and they take little small bites and little small meals of it so that they can consume more of it throughout the day and not have acidosis.
All right, that makes sense.
It does.
Before I kind of realized exactly what you were talking about, I was going to say if you eat a bunch of Snicker bars, it won't be good weight that you're adding, but in those calves, in the context you're talking about, I understand what you're saying there.
Right. It's just about, it's calories in, right? Yeah, we want those calves to gain weight, and that's kind of what it's doing, right? By those calves are going in and they're taking little bites. They don't feel sick. We're not causing any kind of change in rumen pH or change in VFA production, but we're just slowly adding calories to that diet without impacting the gut health of the animal.
Yes, sir.
It's good. And then we just talked about feeding creep feeds for calves. What about for feeding out steers?
So with steers, you can feed steers a few different ways. So the traditional way to feed steers is to, if we think about a stocker calf can go on a high, kind of a high nutrient dense forage such as wheat, and then we can just supplement those cattle with mineral. But eventually they're going to end up in a feed yard, and those cattle are going to be fed one of two ways. They can be fed out of a bunk where they're going to get fed once or twice a day, and it's going to be a total mixed ration. So it's going to have all those nutrients we talked about, really excluding water. So they'll have a water tank that they can drink out of, but everything else that diet's going to have, it's going to have the roughage it needs, the protein, energy, and the vitamins and minerals, all in one mixture. And we put that in front of the cattle, and they consume it either once or twice a day, and they get everything they need from it. The other option is out of a bulk feeder, and out of a bulk feeder, we can use either a non-limited feed or a limiter feed, just like we talked about with the creep feed. And so with a non-limited feed, those cattle, again, they're going to go, and typically once or twice a day, they're going to go tank up at that feeder and eat as much as they can, and then go lay down. And then if they eat again, it'll be from a hay feeder. With a limiter, we're able to change the consumption patterns of those cattle, and they go in and they take small meals, and then they go get a drink of water, and they go eat some hay, and they kind of come and go from the feeder all day. So those are going to be some differences in feeding style. When it comes to terms of differences in diet, I talked about a calf on a creep feeder. They have a high energy requirement. Well, once we wean that calf and we get them started on a feed and they're no longer consuming milk, it's really important that we back down the energy in that feed so that we don't cause ruminal acidosis and we don't cause early onset of fat deposition, right? We want those cattle to grow frame and to grow muscle. So we back the energy way down to kind of to grow them low and slow and get them ready to go in a feed yard where we'll push them again and put them on a higher energy diet.
If you truly want your livestock to perform at their best, make sure to contact Vance Aaron, the owner and operator of AFL Livestock Solutions. Vance specializes in magnawave treatments that use pulsed electromagnetic fields, or PEMF, to relieve pain, swelling, and inflammation, caused to help your livestock feel their best. In addition to livestock, Vance can also help you feel better. His treatment works great on sore muscles and joints, along with other mobility issues. His treatments are FDA approved to treat migraines. Aaron Family Livestock Solutions has helped many exhibitors make it to the backdrop with their proven MagnaWave treatments. Don't miss your next backdrop picture. Give Vance a call at 903-720-3184. Again, that's 903-720-3184. Or find them on Facebook at AFL Livestock Solutions.
So we just finished talking about how you would want to feed out steers and different ways that we can do that. So what do you look for in good feed for cows on a pasture?
So if cows are on pasture, I really want them to get everything they can out of that pasture. We think about having good, lush, green-growing pasture. That should be really all that cow needs other than maybe a mineral supplement. When we're talking about dormant forage, we can we're going to use hay maybe or some standing forage depending on where you're at. Not everywhere in the world's like East Texas. In a lot of parts of the world, they don't feed hay. They just have dormant standing forage, and they just put out maybe a protein supplement to go with those cows. And what that protein supplement and protein and energy supplement can look a lot of different ways. Here in East Texas and Central Texas, you're going to see a lot of cubes fed. You're going to see a lot of lick tubs. But as we move to different parts of the world, you're going to see some different things. You'll see some wet brewers grains or some wet distillers grains. You'll see in West Texas, they feed a lot of whole cottonseed. And again, it can be really more on a cow. We'll focus a lot less on putting the whole diet in front of that cow and just let her use what's around her and just give her the little bump of supplement that she might need to kind of stay where she's at.
That makes sense to me. I definitely using your resources is better than wasting money on something that you don't need to waste it on. Every
right.
cent counts. And like I said in the last episode, 60%, and this is around, it's not around 60% of ranchers' input cost is feed. So saving any money on feed is helpful.
Absolutely. If you already have something that it meets the requirements, you don't need to have more of it. If the hay's giving them the nutrients, you don't need to put in the feed then.
That's
Which
right.
absolutely makes sense.
What starts with what? Knowing what your hay's got. Hay testing, like we talked about in the last episode.
Absolutely. And now moving on to the show world of feeding. What do you look for in a good feed for show steers and heifers?
I look for the same thing in show cattle that I do in production cattle. You know, we don't need to. There's nothing special or different really about a show animal other than maybe what we're trying to get out of them. Typically in a show feed, I'm going to include a higher percentage of a fiber source. My favorite one being cottonseed hulls. We talk about growing show cattle. They've got to have a big middle. They've got to have a lot of depth, a lot of body, and we really want to put them in a situation to where they look 12 o'clock when they walk in the show ring in terms of their muscle makeup and their overall eye appeal. So really on a feed, we just make small changes to that to kind of help bring out some of those things like a big rib or a soft middle, things like that. I guess the only other thing I'd focus on is make sure that we don't put show cattle on a feed that is going to indirectly cause some structural issues and some problems with movement.
That's great. And so I'm going to keep on trucking because you talked about something. You talked about cottonseed hulls. And so I know that a lot of people have different opinions on what feedstuffs they like. Some people like corn because they like the propionate, like we talked about in the last episode. Some people hate corn because they see it and they see it in their feces and they don't like that. And so some people like different stuff. So obviously, like you just said, you like cottonseed hulls. But what feedstuffs do you think? Or do you think there are certain feedstuffs that are better than others? And what feedstuffs do you prefer? Besides cottonseed hulls, of course.
Oh, so I don't have a favorite of any feed resource, any kind of feed ingredient, because cattle can utilize a lot of different things. So my favorite feed ingredients are the ones that make sense from a cost standpoint and from a production standpoint. A lot of it is where you're at too. So for instance, an example I'll give y'all is when I build diets here in Texas, more often than not, my protein source is either going to be dried distiller grains or cottonseed meal. However, when I do work in the Dakotas, we don't use dried distillers grains a whole lot. They use wet or modified processed distillers grains. And the difference there is the distilleries where they have the ethanol plants where they distill the corn are really close to the ranches and feed yards that I work at in the Dakotas. So it makes more sense for them to ship a high moisture product for a really low price because the plants are right down the road. We think about in Texas that those distillers grains have got to travel a long ways. And more often than not, they're going to travel on a rail car. So we've got to dry that down so that we can, one, we're not wasting a bunch of money shipping water, and two, so that that feed stuff stays in a usable state as it travels from north to south. So there's not anything that I'm super, super married to in terms of feed ingredients. One of the things that I'll say is that maybe I'm not as anti-corn as some nutritionists are. I don't think that it's a right or wrong answer. I think that corn is a very valuable feedstuff that when used at the proper feeding rate can be very beneficial to the cattle. But just like we said on the last episode, too much corn doesn't mean you're going to get, if you put more, if a little corn is good, that doesn't always mean that more corn is going to be better. So we can use a lot of different things. And as long as we're getting the performance out of the cattle we need, I'm cool with using just about anything. We use, and so in some diets, we've used tortilla chips, Skittles, peanut butter. We've used cotton from a diaper factory. I mean, we've used a little bit of everything. So again, if the cattle will eat it and it keeps them healthy and it keeps them growing and producing, I'm cool with trying to use it.
They have
That's
a very,
nice.
they have a very refined palate there.
They
I
do.
want to be. I want to be that cow sitting out there eating Skittles.
Yeah.
I don't really like Skittles, but that's a hot
Oh,
take.
come on. Yeah.
Have you been looking for Brahman cattle with a good genetic background? Contact 79 Cattle Company, selling reliable Brahman replacement heifers, Brahman show prospects, and Brahman bulls. Contact Taylor Tate at 210-241-4511. Again, that's 210-241-4511. Or contact Mallory Tate at 210-861-0155, 210-861-0155.
I want to add something to what you just said. You said that some nutritionists don't like using corn. Why is that?
So too much corn is going to bring too much starch into the diet. And I mentioned just briefly that starch in the rumen is going to drive the production of lactate or lactic acid. And lactic acid and lactate production in excess can have negative impacts on foot and leg development. So we can actually cause some laminitis in cattle if we put too much corn in the diet and we produce too much lactate. So I don't want to get too more in depth than that, but some people don't like corn in their diet at all, and they get all their energy from other sources, such as a soy hull pellet. But that's kind of why some people don't like using corn as much.
All right, so I think the quote you were looking for earlier that you had said in the last episode was, "Too much of a good thing is never a great thing." I really like that. We might use that as the title for one of the episodes. Also, I kind of didn't think corn was all that great until this summer, because a lot of times you'll see corn and you'll think, did they even use it, and was it even did it provide any nutrients to them? But I think that like you've said, there's a balance, but that also raises another question in my mind. Corn is known as a great source of propionate. Is there any other feeds that are known as a great source of propionate?
Really, it's going to be any kind of grain that's going to have some kind of level of energy to it. So Milo is another starch heavy. I have a feed mill that I work with in Southeast Texas that the main ingredient in all their feeds is rice, because the people who own the feed mill are rice farmers. So it makes sense for us to use rice. It's the most readily available ingredient they have. So really, we can drive some efficiency and drive some gain, and like you said, propionate production through any kind of grain that's going to have some starch or some sugar to it. Oats are another great energy source. Like I said, I'm not super gung-ho about any one ingredient. It's just about using the one that makes the most sense for us. So a lot of people, they wonder if corn's actually doing anything because they see the husk and the feces. But in reality, there is not a more efficient source of energy to use in any kind of livestock than corn when it comes to driving gain. Now, again, because of that, if not properly fed, we can cause as many problems as we fix. So that's why I implore and really kind of push my customers to keep me involved in their diets and making sure that I go over everything. And really, I prefer to build the diets so that we don't run into any of those issues at any given point.
So why do we see the corn, if it's still being utilized and it's efficient?
You're just seeing the hull. That's just the hull of the corn. They're taking those microbes, use all the starch. They use all the starch up, and then the only thing that's left is just the indigestible hull on that piece of corn.
That makes sense. So I guess we'll kind of move on. And in East Texas, we get a lot of rain, and so our grass lacks some nutrients, and then in other parts of the country they don't get a lot of rain, and their grass has different nutrients than ours, and they have different needs, and there's other countries that or other parts of the country that get a lot of rain, and other parts of the country that don't get a lot of rain. So, and I even know we have some international listeners, so that probably applies to them too. I just kind of want to talk about minerals and supplements that you would need, and how do you know which ones you need, and what minerals your cattle are lacking in because of the grass that they have, or the nutrients they're lacking in, and how you can help remedy that and provide the nutrients they need.
Sure. So when it comes to mineral nutrition, it's typically the last thing that we think about, but something that can have the greatest impact on the overall production and profitability of our herd. So when I'm going through and I'm trying to figure out what mineral is the right fit for this customer, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to take a forage analysis, and I'm going to look at what minerals are in the forages. But really, what's more important is taking a water test. And if we have some mineral deficiencies, but what we more commonly see are antagonisms, so minerals binding one another, whether it be in the water or in the rumen. I'm going to take a water test to kind of see what are some different things that could be causing some issues in terms of mineral. So cattle get a lot of mineral from the forage that they consume, as well as any supplemental feed that they're going to eat. But research is very clear that as if we supplement with some additional minerals such as copper and zinc and manganese, we can increase our level of production for a relatively low cost. So when we think about an average bag of mineral costs $30, right? And if it's a 4 ounce per head per day consumption, that's 200 servings per 50-pound bag of mineral at $30. So you're looking at 15 cents per head per day. And I want y'all to think about how many commercials you've seen on TV. For $2 a day, you can save the elephants in Africa, right? And so think about it. For 15 cents a day, you can have more of your cows bred. And that's kind of how I pitch mineral to customers. And so when it comes to figuring out what the cow's needs are, I typically go to production records. When you can look at things like hair coat or liver biopsies, I really don't like taking blood. Blood doesn't give us a good indicator of minerals status, and a liver biopsy is really invasive. To go in and take a chunk of a liver of a live cow, it's kind of invasive to do that and expensive. So for me, I look at the production records. What is your percent calf crop every year? How many cows are you having come open? What size calves are you weaning every year? Things like that are gonna be kind of what's telling me what they need. So if they've got some deficiencies in terms of production, maybe we can go in and we can make some small changes with minerals and alleviate some of those problems.
So, do you prefer a syrup tub for minerals and supplements, or something else?
So I prefer loose mineral. That's
Okay.
not to say that loose mineral is better than a mineral tub. I prefer loose mineral for a couple of reasons. Is I hate putting out tubs. They're heavy, they're hard to move, they're expensive. So I'm not a big tub fan, but that's my personal preference. As long as it's a fortified product that's been formulated to get the right consumption per head per day, I'm all for using it, whether it be a loose mineral or a syrup tub. One thing I am going to tell you is I am very big about not adding salt to any of the mineral that you put out.
Why's that?
Because pretty much any loose mineral that you go buy is going to have salt in it already. Cattle need about 1/4 of an ounce of salt per head per day. And if that mineral's got 15% salt in it, they're going to get their daily requirement of salt.
So I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, so when we add salt to a loose mineral, all we're really doing is watering the mineral down. So if you think about it, if you put a 50-pound bag of mineral out and it's got 2,000 parts per million of copper, and you put a 50-pound bag of salt in with it, you've now just cut that mineral down to 1,000 parts per million of copper.
That makes sense. So I'm guessing obviously you don't like salt blocks, but what about a mineral block with molasses?
So like
Like
a pressed mineral block.
yes, sir.
So a pressed mineral block. So make sure that I'm really clear on this. A pressed mineral block is okay. I'm fine with that. A trace mineral salt block does not get the job done. So a trace mineral salt block, that cow would have to consume about a quarter of that block every day to get her copper and zinc requirements out of it. So if it's a sure enough mineral block that's been formulated similar to a loose mineral with the same levels of the different trace minerals, I'm cool with that. But if it's just a red trace mineral salt block, that's not enough for what those cows need.
That makes sense. I can see, and I've never really had that broken down before. I've always heard, salt makes them want to drink more, but I can see how that dilutes it. I can see how salt kind of dilutes the nutrients that they need.
I don't know about you guys, but I like the taste of salt.
I do too.
I'm going to eat more salt.
Infinity Cattle Services, owned by Chris Shivers, is glad to be a sponsor of the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. Infinity Cattle Services, a unique, vision-driven, service-oriented company committed to developing successful revenue-producing cattle operations, is a full-service consulting and marketing firm specializing in Brahman and Brahman-influenced cattle. Contact them today to learn more about how they can assist you with locating cattle, cattle mating, sale management, marketing, communications, record keeping, data submission, and a wide array of other services. They can be reached at 713-202-1747. Again, that's 713-202-1747, or at infinitycattleservices@gmail.com. That is infinitycattleservices@gmail.com. Visit their website at infinitycattle.com or check them out on Facebook and Instagram. What about molasses to help improve taste? What are your thoughts on that?
You can use molasses if you've got some cows and that's where like a mineral tub is a good option. Is if you got cows that don't like to eat loose mineral, but they'll eat a tub, you can put a molasses tub with the mineral pack in it and be just fine.
That sounds reasonable.
I had one more thing to add to mineral supplements and stuff. This is kind of off topic, but what are your takes on the heat stress tubs?
So when it comes to heat stress, I don't want to run down any products out there in the world, but really, when it comes to a heat stress product, it's got to work by increasing the efficiency of fiber digestion or alleviating some heat via vasodilation, so dilating the blood vessels. So if it's working and it's actually dilating the blood vessels, the cattle are able to better dissipate the heat, and that can actually be a useful product. If it's not doing those things, it's kind of hard to know if it's really working. We don't really offer much of a heat product line, so I don't talk about it a whole lot, but I did some research over fescue, and fescue causes heat stress, and if you can cause vasodilation, you can alleviate some of that.
So my favorite heat stress relieving product is called Boss Indicus Genetics.
That's right.
I've loved this topic. We only had one, I guess you could say, like written question that we were planning on asking, but we've spent a good at least 7+ minutes, I'd say, on this one topic. So I've really enjoyed that. Now, hopefully you've listened to the episode before this, but we talked about emissions from beef cattle and how people don't quite understand that completely. And so we want to not really talk about the emissions as much, but where you just kind of see that leading the beef industry. And in terms of regulations, where do you see I guess you could say the scare of emissions leading regulations in the cattle industry? And hopefully, over the next 4 years will be kind of deregulated, but we don't know what'll happen after that. So where do you see regulations kind of going from that standpoint?
I'm actually kind of bullish on that front. So when you think about carbon programs and carbon sequestration, a lot of private companies, Cargill is one of them, is investing a lot in carbon sequestration. And so there's more and more programs out there that are privately funded that kind of pay producers and incentivize producers to do different management practices that assist with carbon sequestration. And so as long as those programs are growing, I don't see the government stepping in as much. I actually maybe see some deregulation. If I had to say there was going to be an increase in any kind of government interference, my guess, and I don't work in the government, so don't, this is worth how much it costs you. It's free. I think that it's just going to be requirements for better record keeping and more transparency and more accountability throughout our different levels of production, which I think that if we are voluntarily increasing our accountability and our record keeping, that we're going to have higher quality products and more profitability. And it should never come to the government telling us we have to do it more.
So what you're saying is keep it private and keep the incentives in the private sector.
That's right. If it pays, people will do it.
So, I just want to ask you, along with emissions, where do you see the issue of emissions leading the cattle industry in terms of nutrition?
I see us going down the road that we're already down now, in that it's more about just communicating our message that cows aren't the problem, and communicating that cows are actually putting more carbon in the ground than they're emitting back into the air. And again, just owning up to our part of the total greenhouse gas emissions, and making sure that we're charting what our cattle are producing, mostly in the dairies and the feed yards, and then just putting different practices in place to mitigate some of those. An example of that would be something simple that's used a lot in our feed yard industry would be the use of the product rumensin. That's an ionophore that changes, and it kind of promotes the production of propionate by kind of down-regulating the production of fiber-digesting bacteria. So again, remember we discussed in that last episode that the fiber digesters are the ones making the methane. The ones that produce the propionate, there's no methane with it. So if we can introduce something that's going to increase the feed efficiency by producing more propionate, then more acetate, well, those cattle are going to be on feed less days, and then there's going to be less total methane emitted. So we've had technologies in our industry in place for a long time that are very effective and very, very useful for our producers.
All right. So I just can't resist from talking about the emissions again. So I believe it's from 1991 to 2017. Methane, or the amount of methane in our atmosphere, actually went down, I believe, while the cattle population went up. So I think that just kind of shows if there's such of a problem, why is that actually happening? And that's because they're not a big problem about it. In fact, they're essential for keeping the soil healthy.
That's right.
I've heard it worded before when people were told that cattle were the problem. They would say that cattle aren't the problem; they're the solution, because when they're through that, they're part of the whole cycle of the emissions going into there and back into the nutrients and going into them.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's all about total in versus total out, and as long as we're aware of what we're doing, and we've got very good scientists in at both private and public institutions that are working day in and day out on that, and as long as we stay aware of what we're doing and we spread our message, I think we're going to be fine. I think our industry is going to be in good shape.
Cattle Company. Owned by Eddie Wilson, EP Cattle Company is home of Sir Rouse Handshake. Rouse Handshake is a sound-structured, heavy-muscled bull that is really bold-ribbed. So it comes with no surprise that he is a Fort Worth and San Antonio Junior Show Division Champion and Rio Grande Valley Open Show Division Champion. He is a grandson of BRC Noble and JDH Shank Manso, and is also a great-grandson of Mr. H. Elijah Manso. You can contact Eddie Wilson or Nicole Wilson on Facebook at EP Cattle Company. So remember, if you're looking for some well-performing registered Brahman genetics, contact Eddie Wilson on Facebook.
Right, and another thing is people talk about that cattle consume or take more water than plants and crops, which I mean is true in a way, but when it comes relatively to the amount of nutrients and protein and the amount of nutrients produced by cattle versus plants, they actually consume less water for what they produce.
That's right. So cattle produce less water. Another interesting thing about cattle is that cattle are what we call protein upcyclers. So what I mean by that is they're able to take a very, very low protein organism, which would be all of the different plants that they consume. You know, they're herbivores, so they consume nothing but plants, but they're able to take a low protein diet that is not usable by humans. Grass, right? We can't digest grass, and they're able to turn that into a protein dense product for us to use. So they're actually creating more protein than we could get from what they're consuming.
That's right. Oh, and also one more thing about the water. They put that water actually back into the ground, plus with more nutrients than what it had originally. So that's actually also upcycling again, not necessarily in protein, but still upcycling.
Yep.
Okay, now I think we can move on now. We've said our piece with that. I think. Unless I find some way to get me back into that. Okay. So let's see what this is. We just have a few more questions. I think one last, I guess, written question before we get into the wrapping up and stuff. How does good nutrition management help feed more people on less land, and what can we do to improve that? Because, you know, right now population is growing, and so that means there's more people to feed, but there's also less land for us to produce it on.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So if we are able to use optimal, precise nutrition, we're able to keep cattle on feed less days. And so if we're able to keep more cattle on feed less days, that frees that same ground up to bring in more cattle and to produce that same, you know, tonnage of beef that we need to feed our population as well as people around the world, with a shrinking land supply. So we're able, again, it's about having those feed efficient animal and that tag team approach that we talked about last episode, right? So part of it's the nutrition, part of it's the genetics, part of it is our marketing of our cattle and how our packers are able to utilize every part of that animal for something and waste as little as possible. So I hope I answered your question. That's a good question, and it's one to make you think.
Right. So actually, we'll still tying genetics into nutrition. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. So I know that some breeds are kind of getting a feed efficiency EPD. Some are doing it through RFI, residual feed intake. Some are doing it through just the kind of their own measurements. Some are doing it through residual average daily gain. Where do you see that going? I think, and there's testing in other breeds happening right now, and What do you think it would be best with that when it comes to, you think we should have a EPD for RFI or RADG, or just kind of a other type of measurement that would be good for a feed efficiency EPD?
So I think those are all really good measurements. But whenever we think about trait selection, I'm gonna put on my what little genetics hat I've got, and kind of reinforce that any form of single trait selection is not a good thing. So
Right.
our residual feed intake, residual average daily gain, dollar beef, dollar feedlot, dollar carcass, all these different indexes and EPD measurements, they're tools for us to use to make selections, but we shouldn't base our selection on any one of them individually.
Right, that makes sense. And I'm not saying that you should. I just wanted to know kind of where you saw that moving, because I do think it's important that we know about feed efficiency, because the best way, in my opinion, the best way to make money is to save money. So if you're able to feed your cattle less, or if you're able to feed your cattle less and get more out of it, less for more is always better in my math. Paul, you have anything?
I don't. I think we can go ahead and start wrapping up this episode.
All right. Go ahead.
So, some questions that we always ask everyone to wrap it up. The main part of our podcast is helping people innovate their herd. So, from you to the people listening, what's some advice for ranchers to help them innovate their herd for the better?
So one of the things that I would say to really drive innovation is build a network, build a group of people around you, build a team to help you make decisions both professionally and then personally. So, you know, you're not going to ever have all of the answers, but if you know enough people, they're going to know people, and if you share your network with other people, you're going to be able to find a solution. So I think having a strong network is imperative, and having a good team of both people, on day-to-day operation side, as well as people that specialize in different things, is super important to stay up to date and stay current. There's only so many hours in the day, and all of us have only got so much kind of brain power that we have to spend on any one thing any given day. So if we can include as many different people as we can without having to pay everyone, we can really get a lot done and stay current.
Absolutely, and I think
That was a really good answer. So good, I had to write it down.
I've definitely been writing down a few quotes you've said. You've said a lot of good quotes. I don't know what we're gonna name these two episodes, because it's been pretty good. We may just have to start listing stuff. That's what we might have to do. But I definitely understand the brain power thing. I might be spending too much brain power on math right now, but homework.
Oh,
Anyways,
for sure. And then another question we love to ask everyone, and I'm sure you've heard us ask it, is what are different core values that you'd like to share with us?
So some of my core values, I have two that I think are really big to me. Honesty is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're going to I like what I have to say or not, I feel like it is my obligation to be honest with you. If you can't trust me, then I'm not worth anything to you. My other core value that I put a lot of weight in, two is one is loyalty, and the other is faith. If you trust me and you put enough trust in me to let me be a part of what you're doing, I'm going to be loyal to you, and I'm going to give you everything I can. And I expect that out of the other people in my life. And then faith is another core value of mine, believing that God has put us here to serve a purpose and to glorify Him. And I think my purpose is to help feed the world.
That's great, and I want to go back to something you said in the first episode. I think yes, it was the first episode. You said that, we talked about how you need to trust your nutrition consultant, because they work for the feed company, and obviously the feed company they're going to be happy if you're buying from them. So I think that honesty is definitely something that you make a good point with.
Absolutely. And I think this may just be me. I don't love it when people sugarcoat things. I like it when people give me it straightforward, because the honesty may make me mad in the instant, but them sugarcoating it and basically lying would make me madder in the end.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
We can't find a solution if we're not honest with one another.
That's absolutely true. I mean, especially, I just think of an example, in the show ring. You want a judge to evaluate your animal. You want them to tell you the good, the bad, and obviously you don't want to walk in there and the judge be like, "Oh, this animal isn't worth anything. Why'd you buy it? Why you raise it?" But you want the judge to be honest with you, like, this animal's great structure, has a lot of muscle, but it could use some more rib. Just giving an example, and so that'll help you in your herd versus the not getting any feedback at all. So
Absolutely.
Top Notch Cattle Company, selling semen on high quality registered red and gray Brahman cattle that are reproductively efficient, structurally sound, big ribbed, heavy muscled, and deep bodied. Contact me at 903-649-9155. Again, that's 903-649-9155. Or email me at bbwtopnotchcattle@gmail.com.
all right, so of course we talked about core values, and nothing comes when it comes to morality. Nothing comes without God. So what is your favorite Bible verse?
So my favorite Bible verse is Romans 8:31, and it's a short and simple one, but it's definitely one that I stick to every day, and it basically goes that if God stands with us, who can stand against us? And that every day we're presented with challenges and we're presented with obstacles, and that if we just have faith in God and we have faith in His plan for us, that we will triumph.
I like that, and I like that a lot. Having faith in God is definitely important. That goes back, you talked about trust, loyalty, and then faith. So I think that's definitely important.
Yep. I really like that. I like that verse. I feel like I've seen it. I can't remember where. I think it's like they started making T-shirts and hoodies with that saying, "Faith over fear."
Yeah.
And then it has that verse at the bottom that God stands with me, man can't do anything against me.
Whew. Let's see, it's 7:23. It's getting kind of late, but I've definitely really enjoyed this episode, both of them, and I think this is the only episode where we've gone to we've had to make it into a second episode where we've gone past at least 40 minutes. I mean, let's see, we're at 52 minutes right now. So
wow.
And
I think
then
you've gained multiple awards.
The longest interview we've had.
I'll just tell you guys, I'm going to award myself with a steak as soon as we're done with this. I'm hungry.
That's
Sounds
nice.
good. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about? Any questions? Some people like to ask us questions. I don't know if you wanted to do that. Anything else you wanted us to ask you or anything?
No, I just hope I didn't scare you boys off of grad school too bad.
No.
So just so everyone knows what he's talking about. We took a break between the two episodes, and he was talking about his defending.
Defending my thesis.
Defending your thesis. That's right. All right. Well, you didn't scare us off too bad. At least.
Good deal. I appreciate you guys having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
It's been a lot of fun having you.
Yes, sir. I definitely learned a lot about feed efficiency and different volatile fatty acids and methane, and the list really goes on. Usually I get about a page of notes. I have 2 pages of notes here, so it's definitely been a lot of fun. And just so you can kind of remind everybody how to get in touch with you or what you do and kind of how to get in touch with you
So
again.
the easiest way to get in touch with me is just email me. My email is russell_Carroll@cargill.com.
All right. Sounds good. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast and like this episode. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and YouTube, and you can join our email list, which the form will probably be in the description of this episode, and then it's on Facebook as well. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Carroll. I enjoyed it. Paul?
Thank you for having me, guys.
Me too. Thank you. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
I guess until next time, keep innovating the cattle industry. Signing off. Hi, I'm Baxter Whitworth.
And I'm Paul Hayes.
We're your hosts from the Cattle Innovation Station podcast, and we're at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo Junior Heifer Show.
And today we'll be walking around asking different exhibitors and industry leaders different questions. And it's cold.
Hi guys, I'm here with
Emma.
Emma, what breed of cattle do you show?
Brahmin.
Brahmin, why do you like Brahmins?
Because they're my favorite cow to show.
But why?
Because I get to go, I don't know.
Hi, I'm Paul, and today I'm here with
Alexia.
Alexia. What breed of cattle do you show?
Santa Gertrudis.
What's your favorite thing about them?
They're nice and they're a smaller framed cow, unlike Brahmin.
That hits close to home. Okay. I'm going to test your history on Santa Gertrudis. Where did they originate?
They originated here in Texas at the King Ranch in Kingsville, Texas.
That's very good. I'm glad that you know that. And are you following our podcast currently?
Yes, I am.
Could you show me? Yep, she's a follower. And here you go. We're going to give you one of our Cattle Innovation Station stickers.
Ooh.
Hi guys, I'm here with
My name's Cole Thomas Hayes.
Cole Thomas Hayes. Cole Thomas Hayes, what breed of cattle do you show?
Brahmins.
Cole, who's your brother?
Paul
Is
Hayes.
he a nice brother?
Sometimes.
Sometimes? Okay. Okay, what's your favorite thing about Brahmin cattle?
They're heat tolerant.
They're heat tolerant? Nice. Okay, thank you, Cole.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm here with...
Ross.
What breed of cattle do you show, Ross?
Show Brangus heifers and bulls.
What do you like about Brangus cattle?
Brangus, they're very hardy in the hot Texas weather, and they're very disease resistant as well.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul, and today I'm here with...
My name is Wyatt Tackett.
Hey, Wyatt, how are you today?
I've been doing good. You?
I'm pretty good. What breed of cattle do you show?
We show Polled Hereford.
That's nice. What do you like about your Polled Herefords?
Just like to work with their hair, get them out every so often.
Nice. What else shows do you go to?
Mostly jackpots, but every so often we like to do majors because it just doesn't hurt to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a good time here at Fort Worth.
You too.
Hi guys, I'm your co-host, Paul Hayes, and I'd like to tell you all about my family business that has been going on for over 50 years now, and that is raising quality registered Brahmin cattle. Our ranch is called Flat Rock Brahmins, and we have locations in Glen Rose and LaGrange, Texas. And we are here for all of your cattle needs. Whether it's needing show cattle, replacement females, or even a new herd sire, we would be happy to earn your business and watch our genetics excel in your herd. You can contact me by email at paulhayesv@icloud.com or my dad, who helps manage the ranch, at paulhayesiv@icloud.com, or over the phone at 817-964-2752.
Hello, guys. Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast. We want to make this podcast better. So if you would, please like this episode and leave us feedback in the comment section. Something else that helps make this podcast better is when you respond to the polls. So if you're able, please respond to our polls. Help us make this podcast as good as possible. Thank you, God bless, and have a good day. Thank you for listening to the Cattle Innovation Station podcast.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
I'm your host, Baxter Whitworth.
I'm your co-host, Paul Hayes. Remember our key verse, Proverbs 16:3.
Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans.
Thank you for listening.